Hi, everyone. Welcome to our podcast titled Rings of Revelation, which will peel back layers of story surrounding the Duke Forest, as well as delve into the forest's interaction with the Duke community and beyond. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to sharing our findings with you. Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for being here on the podcast with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the Duke Forest?
Sure. Well, the quick story is that I got my Master's of Environmental Management from the Nicholas School back in 2008. And I joined the Duke Forest team in 2011 after I was gone from the area for about 3 years working in the Sandhills of North Carolina, and came back in 2011 as the program director at the office, and then became the director of the Duke Forest office in 2014. And honestly, as a student, I didn't interact with the Duke Forest very much. And so most of my experience with the Duke Forest has really been as a natural resources professional.
What do you think is the biggest way the Duke Forest has evolved since the time you started working here?
I think I was thinking about this a lot, and I think that's a great question. Since I've been working here, so I've been on the team now for 11 years, and in charge of the team for about 8, and in charge of direction setting for the office and its mission. I think some of the biggest ways are in terms of there's some administrative things. I have worked to retool our revenue expectations around timber management and timber production, work to get that more in line with what's actually out there on the ground, what's a more viable and responsible level of timber management and timber production that the forest can support. I've worked to also expand our revenue opportunities by bringing on new staff capacity for fundraising and development. So prior to that, prior to about 2017, our office was not able to fundraise like most offices at Duke can. So that's been a big shift and a big evolution, and has brought in a lot of good support for us. So there's a few of those administrative things that are quite big changes, and evolutions, truly evolutions in the way things are done and the paradigms that were in place. On the research and teaching specifically, what we've really been focused in doing in the last 10 years is expanding folks' awareness of the Duke Forest as a university-wide resource, so that the forest is not just for ecologists or biologists to either do their research or take their students to, but that the forest is a platform for all disciplines at Duke to do exploration and learning and discovery. And that has really, once we had started really elevating that communication piece, and people were so quick to respond. And so we've done work with artists in the forest now that really had nothing like that had ever happened before. We're involved in an interdisciplinary group originally convened by the Franklin Humanities Institute. So we're just seeing a lot more interest and activity and use of the forest for discovery and exploration by disciplines across the university, not maybe those typical ones you would think of when you think of a forest. So that's a big piece. And then the third piece I would say is that we've really retooled all of our community engagement to be around working with the university, but also the broader public community, and offering the forest as a place to connect with science and understand science, demystify science a little bit, and then also to be a place where you can just learn to understand how you're a part of nature and understand what all the different pieces of nature are. So to grow that connectedness with our natural resources around us. And we've really retooled our focus on community engagement to be around those two things. And that's been a bit of an evolution and a paradigm shift for us. So I think those are maybe cover the big things that have changed or evolved in the last 10 or so years for the forest.
Great. Thank you so much for that in-depth answer. And, you've discussed a lot of the teaching and research activities in the previous question. that you
Mhm.
are involved with, but do you have a favorite one? Like if you had to pick one thing.
Mm. That's really hard for me to answer, but I would say that some of the projects I have been directly involved in with students in the community-based environmental management course here at the Nicholas School have been some of the most, so essentially when Duke Forest, and usually it's me, serves as a client and advisor to certain projects, working with those students in particular and in the on the projects that I've been able to offer to that course have been incredibly rewarding, but also just incredibly useful and given us a body of work to actually implement around these programs or projects we really cared about. So I'll give you a quick example just so it doesn't sound, so you can sort of hear something a little bit more concrete. But I worked with Duke Forest has been convening a regional collaboration of folks interested in connectivity conservation across the triangle since 2015. And I worked with a student in community-based environmental management to say, okay, we've been coming at this really strictly from the lens of the environmental or conservation professional. Who else out there do we have mutual benefit with that we should be reaching out to, not only to be more inclusive and more diverse in the way we're doing our work, but because there's truly these mutual benefits to receive. And so this person led a project where she was able to engage with public health practitioners and public health nonprofits in the area, as well as other diverse types of nonprofits doing social justice type of work, and really explore those overlaps of benefits between connectivity conservation and what the public health and what the social justice folks really cared about, and was able to bring in that kind of that symmetry and alignment. And that was huge. We wouldn't have been able to do that work in the absence of having worked with that person. So I love those engagements with students around projects that are really near and dear and important and relevant to the forest and what our strategies or priorities are at the time.
And what are some of the big ways that Duke students can get involved with the forest and appreciate it, as much as you do, or like try to appreciate it as much as you do?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I have to acknowledge from the get-go is that the big barrier here is transportation. So even though it's not too far down Highway 751 until you can get into parts of the Duke Forest, for a lot of students that don't have transportation on campus, that can be quite a barrier. So one of the ways we've been trying to, and this will be great to share this through this podcast, is that for undergraduates, we are engaging with the Duke Rides program that provides rides to places via Lyft. And so students are actually able to get a Lyft ride free of charge out to one of our destinations or one of our gates in the forest that actually has this interpretive trail on it, where students can come and actually get a holistic picture of what the Duke Forest is and has been, and the kinds of things that are happening there and that people are thinking about when they come there. So that's a great introduction to the forest that undergraduates can actually get themselves to now, even if they don't have transportation. We also have programs, we have some community science programs. In particular, we have a herpetofauna citizen science program that we welcome everybody, undergraduates, members of the public, anybody can participate in that program if you can commit a certain amount of time to doing it. And that will launch in the early next year. It will essentially launch in January and February. And so if students are interested and able to take some time to get out in the woods and essentially survey these transects where you're looking for different amphibians and reptiles, if that's of interest to you, you don't have to have any experience, and you're put on a team. And so you're not out there alone, and it's okay if you don't have any experience because somebody else on your team would. That's another opportunity. I would say also not with the regularity to the schedule, but we often have stewardship projects that we just need people's help with. So just last week we had I believe there were maybe one or two undergraduate students, but it was undergrads, master's students, and some members of the public came and helped us replace some bridges on a trail. And so there's stewardship volunteer type of projects like that. That's a way that students can get involved. But I also should mention our recreation maps for the entire forest. They're available online free of charge. And so students can download those if they go to our website and just fill out a form. Students can also follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram in particular. We also have a YouTube channel. And then we also put out an e-news log or an e-news bulletin about once a month. That's a really great way to just stay up to date with what's going on in the forest and where there might be opportunities to engage. So I would say those are some big ways, other than signing up for some classes with faculty members that use the forest, like Ron Grunwald in biology, or some of the Nicholas School professors that teach the undergraduate environmental science classes and so forth.
Thank you so much. And, it's obvious, it's evident that the forest does a lot for the Duke community as well. And so based on everything you've said, everything you've experienced, and just, your whole kind of time here at Duke, what do you think is the greater purpose of this space to the Duke students and the university community?
Oh, Sibani, that's a hard question to answer. But I would say, I think one angle I can answer that question from is that I think in this time of Duke as an institution really getting out there and in front and bold with, we want to make a commitment to climate. We want to make a commitment to climate that's focused on the people who are involved and the people who are impacted by climate changes the most. I think the community can be really proud of the fact that Duke University as an institution has been really committed to this land base being a natural, mostly forested land base that has all this teaching and research mission, but also has an opportunity for people to just come and connect with nature, that it provides all of these ecosystem services to the region. I mean, this is a legacy that's paying dividends already to Duke's commitment on climate. And Duke's had it for over 90 years, and they've been committed to it when otherwise, that the forest as a land asset in terms of real estate value is huge, right? But Duke has not forsaken all of the other values of the forest that maybe are intangible, maybe you can't monetize. They've not forsaken those for that monetary value. And I think right now, especially again, as Duke as an institution is out there so vocally around climate and social justice and so forth, we can be very proud of that. On the social justice and just cultural resources piece, there's opportunity to understand the human histories of our local area in a very poignant way on the Duke Forest, partly because some of that human history has just simply been preserved out there because it's remained a relatively untouched resource for over 90 years. So, we've got projects examining the human histories, before the time of European settlement, during the time of the first European settlement, and in those later years, what that looked like. And you can see evidence of that and connect with that out on the forest because Duke has held this property for so long. And so I think that's, again, something that the community can really value and be proud of. Did that answer that question fully?
Yeah, it more than answered it. So
okay.
Thank you so much. And, I am grateful to have met you through this experience, and I will send you the final product of this project when we're finished. And
okay.
Thank you for being a part of it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Best of luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to Sara and Sibani for giving such a great overview of how the Duke Forest has been evolving and how it has functioned in the past and how it wants to function in the future. I really enjoyed the parts where Sara was able to focus on Duke's students and how they're becoming more involved. I especially loved when Sara says that the forest needs to start being utilized in subjects outside of STEM. So not just for the ecosystem and for the preserved nature of it, but also just for the innate beauty and the recreation that the Duke Forest brings. So with this kind of in mind, I wanted to take a slightly more personal approach to utilizing the Duke Forest. I wanted to focus on how specifically students view and interact with the Duke Forest. For this, I interviewed Angelina Francis, who frequents the Duke Forest almost daily, and she doesn't use it for STEM or for research or for class, but she uses it for her own personal wellness, and through this has formed a really intimate connection with the forest and nature in general. So without further ado, here we are discussing the wonders that is and are the nature of the Duke Forest.
Agreeing to answer my questions.
Of course, I'm only looking forward to it. I appreciate you having me on today.
Okay, so just to jump right in, how do you involve yourself with the Duke Forest? How does it play into your daily life?
Well, I can't even imagine my daily life without the Duke Forest, just because it's become such a foundational piece to my day and kind of my mental health and feeling grounded. I think it's really common in Duke culture to always be looking for the next way to be the most productive. And I found that I actually am more productive by giving myself an allotted period of time where I'm able just to be by myself, reflecting. I listen to podcasts, making music. Sometimes I just need to think, because that's also really important. And I just can't imagine a better place to do that than in the Duke Forest. So that being said, I do walk there every morning. Time changes based on the time change, but earlier the better is usually my favorite, because it really allows me to just set the whole stage for my day. So when I don't get my walk in, I feel that and I notice that. So it's just like become a very big part of my daily ritual.
Yeah. When you're there, do you tend to focus on more of the nature or more of like whatever you're listening to in that moment?
I think that's kind of a funny question you asked that, because I actually just came back from my walk maybe 30 minutes ago. And I noticed that I was struggling to follow my podcast today, because I just kept looking at the leaves, because I'm just very excited. They were very colorful earlier in the fall, and they
So
seemed
colorful.
like a faux death. Like they seemed like they were gone.
Yeah.
And as my roommate can tell you, I love the leaves. I bring one home every week for us to put on the fridge. But I was really upset because I thought the leaves were gone, but they've made the biggest comeback ever. They're red, they're fiery. And I was listening to my podcast, I had to keep hitting that 15 seconds back thing, because I just kept noticing I was looking through the leaves. So I think it's definitely a mixture. If I have something that I'm really deep in thought about, I do use that as time to kind of reflect. And like, I know the trail so well that I walk that I can easily get lost in thought. But I think there are multiple moments almost within that where like having such a beautiful backdrop to kind of listen to something or be pensive in, it only adds for the most part. It's always something I take time to acknowledge. And I guess like the last thing I want to add is just like walking it every day, seeing it change throughout the year. As someone from California, my environment doesn't change very much at all. You could drop me off on any day of the year and I would tell you it's 72 and sunny, and it's maybe Christmas tomorrow, maybe it's spring break, I don't know. Here it's just been amazing to kind of feel myself grow and change with the environment, and feeling very tied to that as well. So that's also something I think about a lot on my walks, that kind of brings me into that anchoring point with the nature around me.
Absolutely. And I love that you get out there and you're working with the forest in such a like personal way, as opposed to with class or with anything else. Like it's really refreshing, I'm sure. But I know that I at least a lot of my classes have taken me out there. I have a couple STEM classes that we go out
Tasting classes.
What?
You have good tasting classes.
Yes, I do. And so they'll take me out into the forest, and it's always just so nice. It makes the class so much better. I always feel like it adds on to the class. It really helps build the experience. Have you been out there with any of your classes before? Do you like bringing that more structured nature into something that's usually pretty personal for you?
I think, well, for one, This is the first year I've really had like a lot of classes go to the forest. I have had a few that do the gardens as well, which is also a sanctuary for me. But um, I do enjoy having class outside. I will never be someone who would opt for being inside over outside. I will say it's a very different experience though. It gives me the same energy and it still feels very um, what's the word I'm looking for? Like almost like fueling or igniting. Um, and serene too at the same time, which I know sounds like kind of a weird dichotomy, but they both happen. I would say that the intentionality behind going by myself makes it feel a little different. Um, but I definitely love both. They just kind of serve different niches in my life. But I mean, I'll
Absolutely.
always opt for going to a class outside over inside.
Absolutely. Um, so then my next kind of big question is, you kind of mentioned that like the being in the forest helps your mindset, helps your mental health. How do you feel like it does that? Is it just being able to detach, or is it actually like experiencing the nature that's around you, or both?
I think it's a simple question that has an answer that probably changes frequently. I would say for the most part, what I like about it is, like I said, that intentionality behind it, where it's time for myself. But honestly, this is making me think of, do I have time to pull up something real quick? I
Absolutely.
have a segment of a poem that just triggered when you said that, that I think really captures it well. Okay, it's just an excerpt, and I definitely won't read the whole thing because it's super long, but it's called Above Tintern Abbey, and it's by William Wordsworth. And I actually heard it read out loud for the first time while I was in the Duke Gardens, and I felt, or not Duke Gardens, the Duke Forest, um, over podcast, and it totally answers what I feel like it does for me. So
Absolutely.
I'll just start now. So, or I have learned to look on nature not as in the hour of thoughtless youth, but hearing oftentimes the still sad music of humanity, not harsh nor braiding, though of ample power to chasten and subdue. And I have felt a presence that disturbs me with the joy of elevated thoughts, a sense of sublime, of something far more deeply interfused, whose dwelling is the light of setting suns and the round ocean and the living air and the blue sky, and in the mind of man a motion and a spirit that impels all thinking things, all objects of all thought, and rolls through all things. Therefore am I still a lover of the meadows and the woods and mountains, and of all that we behold from this green earth, of all the mighty world of eye and ear, with what they half create and what perceive, well pleased to recognize in nature and the language of the sense, the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart, and soul of all my moral being. So that's by Wordsworth. And I think that when I first heard that, I replayed it again like multiple times. And I think what I really liked about the idea is the fact that like nature is anchoring. And it also, even though I like to go there in solitude the most, it makes me feel like I am part of this greater picture and part of this. Like, I think all people kind of get that feeling of sublime when they're in nature. Sure, some people go out of their way to be a little bit more intentional about it than others, but I think we all can realize that, okay, he says, a lover of the meadows and the woods, of the mighty world, it rolls through all things. Like, it does roll through all things, and we all are connected to the nature because we are part of nature, whether or not we like to act like it. Because I know we do see ourselves as separate, kind of like how we don't see ourselves as animals, but we definitely are.
Right.
I just feel like what it serves for my mental health is it weirdly almost allows me to show up better as a human in other circumstances, because it, one, allows me to know myself better, two, it makes me feel anchored and relaxed, and like my mind, it's like my brain cleaning, and then three, I think it's just when I think about when I'm in the forest, it just feels so sacred and so safe and such like a haven that I feel like I'm able to come out and be just a better person in all regards, because it's just so balancing for me. So I think a long-winded way of saying I like it because it feels like almost coming home for a second, or a nest, and kind of getting a grip on who I am again. And then I'm able to show up better in other places and be a better human for other people as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that poem. That was beautiful. And I think it did really encapture.
It's a beautiful poem.
Like,
I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost there's almost a religiosity to nature, right? Like, it almost feels like there's a kind of worship,
right,
that I thought was captured well in this poem. And I don't know, I thought it was really beautiful. So I just, when you were asking, I thought I'd share.
Yeah, I loved it. Thank you. Um,
Of course.
and so my last and final question is, what do you see the purpose of the forest for Duke and Duke students? I know that you're just one person and you're gonna generalize to a great population, but given, how familiar you are with it and also like your personal ties to it, how do you feel like Duke students should be using it? How do you feel like the Duke Forest should be, not necessarily marketed, but shown to Duke students? What's your take?
Um, Great question. I would say I think the people that use the Duke Forest use it 100%, and the ones who do not don't
Right.
use it at all for the most part. I would say that is a symptom of it. Like I was kind of saying before, like we're college students and we kind of make priorities, and I think going for a walk, it's almost like you don't know what you're missing out on until you start doing it more. And I mean, I used to go to the gardens every day. And that's like another example of something that's like so close. It's like literally I can see it from the window I'm standing at right now, but no one goes to it. I just feel like overall it's just very underutilized, but like not in a judgmental way do I say that. I say it more of like, oh, I feel all those bad people are missing out on such a beautiful resource we have here.
I
How
feel like
they
a lot of
should be
people don't
using
even
it.
know about it sometimes.
They don't even know about it sometimes,
Right.
or they'll be like, oh, like I mean, I recently took my boyfriend on a trail that he's like, I didn't even know this existed, and I
Right.
drive by this every day, and I'm like, wow, that is just like so sad because I mean, of course, everyone has their different likes and dislikes. I mean, to me, this feels like a need versus a not need, but I think everyone does need this. They just don't know. But I think making it even more like accessible to students, like the fact that we were talking about like having classes in the gardens, classes in the forest, like that opens eyes for so many people.
Absolutely.
And then I would also just say like honestly just encouraging people to go try it out. I think it's funny because I do walk every morning and people will often be like, oh, like I would love to come with you. What time do you go? And when they hear what time I go, that's usually when I get a little bit of a fall off. But people do express interest. I think they just don't go out of their way to put that intentionality behind it. And so just I'm sure if some of these people went on one walk with me or one walk by themselves, not to flatter myself, but like just like took that time out of their day to try it, they would understand how addictive it is just to feel part of the nature here on our beautiful campus. So I think it's a mixture of not knowing and also not knowing how impactful it can be for you, especially in such a whirlwind, chaotic place.
Yeah, absolutely. I thank you so much for your opinions and views on it. I tend to agree with you in these aspects. I really love the forest, and I'm there frequently as well.
Yeah.
And I think that it just has such a innate and natural beauty and utility outside of STEM. Even on STEM, I go there all the time for a class, and it does just have a totally different feel when you're there for yourself or for even not just for yourself, but just to be around it.
Yeah, no, I mean, you've always said stuff like that too. I know you totally understand like that weird, not weird, but unique energy and relaxation you get from both.
It's exhilarating and settling and calming all at the same time.
Exactly. It's like the sublime, like that he's talking about the poem. It's like, yeah. So yeah, those are kind of just my thoughts on it. I know it's only one opinion, but I'm a very big proponent. So.
Thank you so much for talking to me about it.
Of course.
I appreciate it. I hope you have a great
day. You too. Go for a walk.
I definitely will.
Angelina clearly had a lot of valuable thoughts and insights and information on the Duke Forest. I love how she started by saying the forest was integral to her life and how easy it was to get caught up in the material world. I feel as though I'm easily distracted by the future and all the exams I feel I must do, especially being at Duke. I feel like that's just such a part of culture. But nature has always been able to pull me out of that future and forward thinking. It brings me into the moment and helps me focus on the world around me. This was the use outside of STEM that I believe Sara Childs was referring to. She wants to increase student involvement and increase that personal and emotional connection to the forest. And I believe that showing students Angelina's side of the story, the side where nature isn't just about the ecosystem and the variety of species, but it's about beauty and serenity and the sublime. I think showing that would really open many students' eyes to the beauty of nature that exists so close to them and that so few actually know about. And I think that this really ties so closely these ideas tie so closely to my favorite part of the interview. And this is when I asked Angelina whether it was nature or the detachment from the material that brought her to the forest every day. And she read me a poem that showed me how the answer to that question is both. I had never heard the poem before, and I thought the last sentence of the poem so perfectly describes how nature is able to facilitate that detachment. So this is a sentence that I want to leave you all with. Therefore am I still, a lover of meadows and the woods, and mountains, and of all that we behold, from this green earth, of all the mighty world, of eye and ear, both what they have create and what they perceive. Well pleased to recognize in nature and the language of the sense, the anchor of my purest thoughts, the nurse, the guide, the guardian of my heart and soul, of all my moral being.